This is the Bluegrass Blues podcast. I'm Amy.
And I'm Jesse. Well, today's going to be interesting because we have some construction work going on in the house. We're getting a new bathroom put in, so you might hear some hammering downstairs because they're putting up drywall on the second floor as well as the first floor. And what else is going on? Well, we have airplanes going overhead because we are still on the flight path. And you might hear in the background cicadas because we're in that 17-year cycle. And this is the Brood 14, which is now, it seems to be all over the place. It's almost like hearing a spaceship land with the noise they're making. And, this is the kind of stuff we expect to hear like we're out in the country, and here we are in the city. So that's really weird looking. But one thing that's happened recently is we bought a property out in the country. It's in Nelson County, and it's adjacent to the Bernheim Forest. So I was out there last week or the week before just looking around, and one of the first things I noticed was poisonous snakes. There are tons of poisonous snakes out there. And Amy, you work at Bernheim, or you do some guiding things there. Can you tell me what dangerous animals I should be watching out for?
There are just 2 venomous snakes in Kentucky, and you happen to have quite a few copperheads on your property, as I understand.
Yeah, there were at least 14 we've found so far.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah.
Many of us that have worked at Bernheim for years, and those of us who are naturalists, have never seen venomous snakes in all the time that we've been out in Bernheim. There are also the other venomous snake is a rattlesnake. But mostly what we try to do at Bernheim is educate the public so that they're not afraid of the regular snakes that are not venomous and are not harmful and are beneficial to the environment. And so there are many of those. And when we have kids and they're walking out in the creek and stuff, we get really excited if we see a snake, and we show them the snake, and then they are sensitized to it, and then they're not going to harm the snake. And that's the same thing with bugs. By the way, little pitch for Bernheim, Bug Fest is coming up on September 20th. And this is an event you do not want to miss. I mean, if you love bugs, if you're afraid of bugs, if you are bug neutral, there's a bug parade. There's this guy who has a podcast and a website called All Bugs Go to Kevin, because his name is Kevin. Pretty clever. He lives in Evansville. He's coming down for that. You got to come to Bug Fest. I think it's September 20th from 11 to 3. And you can say hi to me because I will be out there just getting my geek on with as many bugs as I can find.
And there are a lot of things going on in Bernheim. I was told that there was like some musical event recently where...
Yeah, it was so fun. It was called Connect. And it goes from like 6:34 p.m. to 11:34 p.m. and it was a couple weeks ago. And basically what happens is they have artists set up installation. They have entertainment. So there are bands that are set up on their stages, and you can come, you can have an adult beverage, you can have a non-alcoholic beverage, you can have food, and you can listen to great music and see really cool art. And some of my favorite things were they had a laser show that they basically emitted onto a tree canopy, and it was pretty trippy. I have a feeling if some of us were, partaking in some fun things, that watching that laser show was probably pretty fun. But one of my favorite things is the Astronomy Society sets up their telescopes. And so we saw all kinds of really cool stars. And then at about 11:30, Saturn was rising. And I got to tell you, I'm 62. One of the coolest things I have ever seen through a telescope is Saturn with its ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. And it also reminds you that you are a speck of a speck of a speck of a speck of stardust on this very small planet.
And that's one of the things I'm going to find interesting about being or having property out in the forest, because there's no light pollution there, and it's just stars and stars forever.
You're going to see meteor showers.
Right,
You're going to
yeah.
see the Milky Way.
I remember when I was in England, we had a property, or we lived at a property that was just really far from London, maybe an hour and a half away from London, out in the country. And at night we could go outside and we could actually see satellites go across the sky, which was just amazing.
You can see those at Bernheim. We saw them the last time I was there.
Well,
You'll see them at your place.
yeah, I know, if the snakes don't scare me into the house again. But and you were talking about just the musical thing going on there, and just one thing that quickly came to my mind is that Teddy Abrams, who's the musical director of the Louisville Orchestra, has just signed a contract to stay in Louisville for another 3 years, which is really a big deal because he's well known throughout the country. I think he's a Grammy Award winner, or the orchestra has won Grammy Awards. And what surprises me, or I don't know if it's surprising to me, but there was an opening that's just opened up at the San Francisco Symphony. And one of the things I was thinking was that, oh, well, that's something that they'll offer Teddy. But, he didn't, either he hasn't been approached for it or he has been approached for it and isn't taking it. But it's really interesting that he's decided to stay in Louisville, and you have a better angle on why that is.
Well, I think Teddy is a tour de force here, and he also has so much creative freedom. He has taken the orchestra all throughout the city, to schools, all throughout the state. He wrote an orchestral piece to be played underneath Mammoth Cave, in the Great Hall of Mammoth Cave, with Yo-Yo Ma. I was standing 4 feet away from Yo-Yo Ma during this performance in Mammoth Cave. Another epic event that I will never forget. Teddy has so much creative license here, and honestly, if he goes to a larger market, I think the board of directors, I think things will box him, the structure will box him in a way that he is just free here.
Right. And there's so much more creative freedom
Totally.
for him here. Plus, to be honest, the cost of living is not very much here compared to somewhere like San Francisco, where you have to be a millionaire to buy a house, because the cheapest houses are $1 million. So it's good for Louisville. It's also something that we hope the public takes advantage of, because there are a lot of offerings that Louisville has in terms of the arts. But there are also things that we have to worry about here, because there's another event coming up next week on the I forget where
On the Belvedere?
Yeah.
So this weekend is World Fest. It's Labor Day weekend. So August 29th to September 1st, and it's the 23rd annual World Fest. And it attracts more than 150,000 people over the 4-day Labor Day weekend, really popular. And it basically celebrates and showcases all of the diverse international cultures and communities that make up Louisville. And I'll tell you what I'm really concerned about is this year just going to be a festival for white people, to show up at? Because this would be a prime target for ICE, having all these brown people from around the world, natural, they're citizens of the United States, legal immigrants, etc., legal refugees, and ICE could just come and cause so much chaos. You have all these families with children, just imagine. And I just have a feeling that our very rich, diverse community is going to stay inside for safety.
And the other thing to this is that our mayor has proven that he's not going to defend the immigrants in this city, because he's pretty much acquiesced to what the Trump administration wants to do in terms of just letting ICE have free reign here. Now, I'm sure he would say that's not the case, but the fact that he's made it, they've actually done it so that ICE won't come into the city, or Louisville won't be placed on this list of sanctuary cities anymore, because the mayor has decided that we're not going to be a sanctuary. We're going to just acquiesce to the Trump administration. So I really understand your point about why would anyone of any color go to these events in Louisville when the mayor has shown that he's not going to defend people.
And this, it says that 150 international vendors are going to present their arts, merchandise, food, and beverages. And then it says a parade of cultures is going to take place with nearly 1,000 participants celebrating all the diverse cultures in Louisville. I don't know. Is this really going to happen or what?
Yeah, I don't know. And, these are some of the concerns we have, because this is, these are important things to do, because it does show the diversity of the community and how much everyone has to offer to Louisville being like really the place to be in Kentucky in terms of freedom of thought, learning about different cultures, having better choices to deal with than what's being offered in other parts of the state. But again, we have this situation where the Democratic leadership doesn't stand up for anything. And you can just compare that to what happened in Illinois this week, where the governor and the mayor of Chicago and all the political leaders in Illinois got together. They were all Democrats, and they stood up to the Trump administration's plan to bring soldiers into Chicago. They're talking about bringing the National Guard into Chicago, which they've already done in Washington, D.C. They've already done this in Los Angeles. This is just another step toward an authoritarian rule. But, Democrats here don't do that. And that really is annoying. Like last week, one of the Republican representatives was talking about redistricting in Kentucky. And that's another thing that's been going around recently, where Texas has decided to redistrict in order to add 5 more Republican seats to Congress. And California is countering that by redistricting as well. So they'll bring more Democratic seats. And Andy Beshear, to his credit, had said that that's a good thing, that, redistricting is wrong if you're going to do it just to give your side an advantage. But that's what Texas is doing, and so California's deciding, okay, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to do it. And when Beshear said that he supported those efforts in California, some Republican here said, well, maybe we'll redistrict the seats in Kentucky. They have every congressional seat in Kentucky, with the exception of the one in Louisville.
Right, there's 5 altogether,
yeah,
4 are red.
Yeah, and that's Morgan McGarvey. And what really bothered me about this is that when the Republicans said that, I saw nothing covered about what McGarvey was saying in terms of that, because if I were the Democratic representative here and someone said that they were going to redistrict to get me out of my seat, I would just go nuclear, and I would say horrible things about them. I would be out in the state going through all the districts where Republicans aren't holding town hall meetings, and as a Democrat, I would be there saying, here, I'm here talking to you. You're not my constituents, but I'm listening to you, whereas your representative won't even show his face because either he's afraid of you or he doesn't care. And I say he because there are only men who are representatives in this state right now. So, but McGarvey hasn't done anything, and this is a problem that we've talked about in other podcasts about the lack of resolve by Democrats to deal with what's going on in the country. There are a few Democrats who are going around the country, like Bernie Sanders. Well, he's not a Democrat, but he is affiliated with the Democratic Party, and Ocasio-Cortez, and Tammy Baldwin, who's the legislator from Illinois. She's a senator who lost her legs while serving in the military. She's going to Missouri to talk to red districts there about, the things that the Republicans are doing to hurt their constituents. But
And she's from Wisconsin.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay.
But, it's just really annoying that the Democrats here aren't doing these kinds of things and getting out to the people. But what they're doing is just essentially ceding their influence to the Republican Party, which has ceded its influence to Donald Trump. So,
And I was talking to someone at lunch about this very issue, and she thinks that people are now just very, very afraid. This is what happens with the rise of authoritarianism, right? And so people are afraid they're going to lose their jobs because now they're paid a lot, right? And I don't want to lose my job, or they're afraid that their family is going to be targeted, or they're afraid, as like at the Federal Reserve Bank, what's going on with Ms. Cook, and he wants to fire a Federal Reserve Board governor, and she's suing him. But there aren't a lot of people that are standing up to Donald Trump because they're really acting in fear. And I have compassion for people who want to be safe, but our democracy is fraying. I mean, it's imploding, really. Every single day something horrible is happening to it, and we need leadership on the Democratic side.
Right.
I don't see it.
We're now in an authoritarian state, which, the reality is that for certain members of the population in America, it's always been an authoritarian state. Now it's like getting public notice because white people are affected by it more than they were in the past. So, there were, you go back in history, there was Jim Crow, there was slavery, there were acts that were designed to take away responsibility or rights from people from Latin America. There were laws passed against the Asian community. So authoritarianism has always been here, but now it's more blatant than it's ever been, because in the past you had the feeling that at least the courts would stop this, but we're now in this situation where the courts are not doing anything, or the courts have been so stacked with Republican legislators that anything that we thought was safe in the past is now up for grabs. Just this whole thing with we talked about the targeting of trans children in the past. That's something that is this idea that you're going after the weakest or the people who are most vulnerable for your authoritarian efforts. And, once they get rid of the trans people, as they want to do, then they'll go for gay marriage. I saw that they're now talking about reversing interracial marriage, which, this is, last year, 2 years ago, we would say, oh, this is impossible, that's never going to happen. But 3 years ago, we were saying that Roe v. Wade would never be overturned. And this movement toward this authoritarian effort doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be raising the concern that it should be raising. And I want to just diverge here or go off into a tangent here, but I don't watch TV news. I just avoid it because I don't think they do a very good job. But I was in the doctor's office this week, and they have television going on in the background. And one of the things that happened was the person who covers the White House for CBS News was on the air talking about Taylor Swift's engagement to Kelsey and Travis Kelsey. And I was thinking, wait a minute, you're the White House correspondent, and you're excited about this pop star and football player getting married? But, it was, the worst part was she did it on a Tuesday, and they were still talking about it like happily on a Wednesday. So there's like this disconnect in the American media about what's really going on now. It's I know it's about ratings, and I know it's about, keep getting people on watching your broadcast, but you don't have the White House correspondent talking about Taylor Swift.
Right.
That's just not right. And the other thing was, if you listen to daytime television, there's a lot of daytime talk shows where they just, it's annoying listening to the platitudes and all this, like feel good effort that they're trying to do when there's nothing to feel good about.
Yeah. And you had said something that the courts aren't doing anything. I would argue that there are judges that are fighting the good fight. We have an executive branch now that has basically carte blanche to do whatever they want to do, including putting these Stalin-esque banners of Trump everywhere, right? I mean, come on, he could be Hitler, he could be Saddam Hussein, Stalin. He just, of course, Project 2025 he's the figurehead. Then you have the legislative branch, which we would argue isn't doing anything on either side of the aisle. Now, so we've been really hoping that the judicial branch would step up. And as you said, Mitch McConnell, our own senior senator, was a major force of blocking federal judgeships when Obama was president.
Right, he stole a Supreme Court seat.
Exactly. So, but I do want to say that there are judges fighting the good fight. It just does seem like all three branches of government are collapsing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you on the judges. There are judges who are trying to stop this craziness, but it goes to the Supreme Court, and there are only 3 justices left who are going to defend it. It's Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor.
Right.
But the rest are, it's just it's a 6-3 court on all these things, and there are no moderates on the court anymore, from what I can tell. They're either very far right or, and I'm not going to say that the liberals are far left, because they're not. But there's just this imbalance, which people in general don't seem to understand. And that's another thing I'm seeing as I watch, like, just people talk about what's going on in the country, where people just don't know what's going on. There's South Park has been doing these really weird attacks on the Trump administration, and I watch people talking about these episodes, and they have no idea that, like, Kristi Noem actually shot a dog in the face,
right?
Or that Donald Trump is just
a convicted felon 34 times while he's trying to
put other people, accuse other people of being of doing illegal things, when he has been convicted of doing illegal things.
How do you spell hypocrite?
Donald, Donaldtrump. That's how you spell it.
Yeah.
But, it's things that we have to keep an eye on, but it's also, we have to hold not only Republicans accountable, but we have to hold Democrats accountable for what they're doing, because I don't know what Chuck Schumer is doing. I have no faith in what he does anymore. Hakeem Jeffries, I had great hopes for him, but I don't see him doing that much. And our congressman is really doing nothing. I think he's like a non-entity. If, let's say, the Republicans did redistrict and redistricted him out, would anyone notice? That's what really bothers me about him more than anything, is that I really feel that if you go out into the city and you ask who's your congressman, people are not going to, they'll have no idea, but they can tell you who the congresswoman from the Bronx is, and they can tell you who the black Texas Democrat is, who's giving Marjorie Taylor Greene a hard time.
Well, my experience, though, is if you live in and this is a generalization, but if you live in the Highlands, if you live in Crescent Hill, maybe Old Louisville, you know who Morgan McGarvey is, and you've seen him and you like him because he shows up at your stuff. And my feeling is he does the bare minimum, and we need him.
We need him out there.
We need him out
just
there.
Yelling.
He's the only one in the whole state. He should be out there.
Well, he and Andy Bashir,
Yeah.
that's the only other Democrat in the state. And I know there's a lieutenant governor, but I don't know who that is.
Coleman, she's
Yeah.
probably she's running for governor.
Right, and
But people don't know who she is.
right, no one
Yeah.
knows. And it's possible she'll be running against James Comey, because there's some speculation that Comer, right? Comey was the FBI director,
Right.
But Comer, who's definitely a MAGA Trump bootlicker, he could be running for governor and he could win.
So I have a lot of people that I talk to about all this stuff, right? And, one of the things, actually, I was with a friend. She's an African-American woman, a bit older than I. We both went to Wesleyan together, and we had lunch today. Her daughter is a dean at a state school, not in this state, but in another state. And she was told last week that she was losing her job. DEI came up, and they're moving her over to another school. And so far, she has her salary through the end of the year. So I am talking to so many people. And she also has a daughter who works at FEMA. And, there's just so much uncertainty around us. So one of the things my friend said was, am I doing enough? And she said, we always asked as young people, like, what would we have done in Germany during World War II? What would we have done? And she says to me, this is now. We are here. What are we doing? And so I showed her the 5 Calls app. She didn't know about that app, and so she's got the app. And then I talked to her about some other ways to plug in, and she's really talented, and we came up with some other ways for her to use her special skills and strengths. But one of the things that is really helping me find some serenity now, because I just think that all this stuff overwhelms us. All of this stuff is meant to deplete us and distract us so that we hide in our homes and do nothing, especially white people. And so what I'm doing now is I've gone back to yoga, and it is really changing my life, because I get really present and I'm focused on my breath. And for an hour and 15 minutes, I'm breathing, I'm stretching, I'm in mountain pose or warrior pose, and I'm strong and I'm getting stronger. And it's really helping me the rest of the day when I'm out there being of service and community. So that's one thing that I'm finding is really helping me right now. And I think exercise is really critical.
Did you participate in the yoga in Central Park this year?
I didn't go ever. It was on my calendar, and I was usually at Bernheim those mornings.
Right. Yeah, because it was Saturday mornings from June until now, where people just get together on the stage that the Kentucky Shakespeare has its plays on. And I walked by a couple of times, and there are just dozens of people just doing yoga in the park.
Which is awesome. It's accessible, it's free, it's right in the middle of a community, a very diverse community. Props to them. The other thing I wanted to mention, I've already mentioned nature, but I just find being outside, my heart rate goes down, I breathe more deeply. I'm much more aware of being small in the natural world, and I'm reminded of the natural world. And then I can do things like buy my swamp milkweed so I can attract monarch butterflies. And that's a part that we can all play too. But I also wanted to mention that I'm in a recovery group, a 12-step program, and you're not supposed to talk about outside issues when you're working the steps in your program. And there are several of us who don't have family members that necessarily agree with us, and we don't have safe places to talk. So we are getting together monthly, and there's a grief book in our program that we're using, and instead of the particular addiction that has affected our lives or other family members' lives, we are using this dysfunctional government as that addict. And we are coming together with ways to be strong and powerful and use our sphere of influence during this time, and that has been really helpful. And these women don't have any other safe place to go typically to just express their concern or their fear or their rage with other people. So I highly encourage everybody to find your people now.
Right. You know, we're I actually I'm doing walks every day. Like I've been doing from 5 to 8 miles a day, just walking around the city, and you know I'm just seeing a lot of interesting things. Like I usually walk from my place in Old Louisville through the U of L campus. I walk past all of the athletic fields, so you know I'll see student athletes just in training for whatever event, because I passed the lacrosse field and I saw the women's team out there the other day, and I passed the soccer field and I see the men's and women's teams doing practice there. During the summer, I would walk by the baseball field and saw the baseball team doing things. And, you know, it's good to see there's a lot of stuff going on campus, which is also free. Like they're free sports. You do have to pay for some of the sports, but for the most part, you can go and watch student athletes do their thing. I've also been walking a lot around the downtown area, and you know, those are like more substantive walks because I'm seeing things I didn't know were here. For example, I didn't know that there's like a whole kind of music row on Main Street at night. You know, there's a lot of bars and just places where musicians will perform. I've walked by the Louisville Ballet building on Main Street, and you know there are things that they're advertising that I want to go see. Like there's supposed to be a ballet of Dracula in mid-October, which looks really interesting. And I walked by the baseball field just yesterday just to see what's there, and it's the Cincinnati Reds farm team is the Louisville Bats. So you know there are things to do downtown. Plus there are tons of restaurants that you know I just never get to because I don't think in terms of going downtown. When I'm going out to eat, I'm usually going along Bardstown Road or something. But there are just really high-end restaurants there. 21C near the Muhammad Ali Museum.
Mayan Cafe is my favorite restaurant
Yeah.
in town. And I just got to give them props because they show up for our nonprofit community. I'm on the board of Feed Louisville, and they feed us at our board meetings. They're feeding us at our board retreat. They are of service to so many good causes. That's another way to use your power, is to find out the local businesses that are supporting our cause and throw the money. You know, down there right now on Main Street, there's infrastructure work, and some of the businesses are being impacted by, you know, road work and things like that. So know thy businesses and spend thy money wisely. I mean, that's a form of protest right there.
Right, and while we're talking about helping out the restaurants here, let's note that Churchill Downs is doing everything it can to destroy the restaurant scene downtown, because they've signed these deals, especially around Derby time, that pretty much force everybody to stay at the Downs for whatever events are going on. And the things they're doing are actually hurting the restaurants in Louisville. I was when we were at this the Japanese place.
The Japanese place.
Yeah,
Where were we?
Yeah, it was near not far from Cherokee Park. But maybe you weren't there. Well, I think you were there. But
Yeah,
we were told by the owner that they have to close on the Derby because they close off the road in their area. So
Oh no, that wasn't Cherokee Park. That was the place on Woodlawn Avenue
yeah.
in the south end.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool place to support. They've got it's sort of like Logan Street Market in the south end. And he said they basically have to close up because you can't get there.
Right.
They close the exits off the expressway. You can't even access their restaurants.
Right, and the other thing was that there are a lot of restaurants that have sent letters, just written letters to the editor, saying that what Churchill Downs is doing is killing the restaurant industry here because they're, especially during Derby week, because they're sort of confining people to the Downs,
Right.
which, is what they're going to do because Churchill Downs is a corporation, and its loyalty is not to the community that built it up, it's to its shareholders, which we're hearing a lot about, this being responsible for shareholders but not really caring about the community, because Churchill Downs really doesn't sponsor anything in town. Maybe it does, but I haven't. I get the feeling that they don't do anything out of the ordinary to let people know that Louisville is a place to be. They only are interested in, getting all the rich people to come to the Derby for Derby week, and containing everybody at the Downs. Like, what was it? Now they've got Derby going on, so Thursdays are closed off. They made this deal with NBC that will show the Oaks on Friday night, which is like one of the big days for restaurants in town, like Derby weekend. Friday night is a big thing, but they've moved the hours of the running of the Oaks to a later time, so people aren't going to go out to eat afterwards. They'll just eat at the Downs.
To your point, I was looking up the Churchill Downs Foundation, and I really haven't known any nonprofit that has gotten money. And, the house always wins, Jesse. So
Right.
what I was thinking about was like going to Bellagio in Las Vegas. And of course, they want you to eat at the Bellagio and
Right.
spend all your money and stay at the Bellagio,
Right,
so that
yeah.
they've got a captive audience, right? So you spend all your money. So I was looking at the Churchill Downs Foundation, and, obviously the house always wins, so they're making a lot of money, and they boast that they gave over $5 million in charitable grants and in-kind donations every year to over 800 organizations. I mean, if you do the math, that's like $20 an organization.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
$5 million is
It's
such
not
a drop in the
right.
bucket.
It's not much at all,
Yeah.
considering the money that they're getting from the TV rights to the Derby, and just from
And all the people
coming in, and the ticket prices
Mm-hmm.
are just astronomical now. Because I think I've said this before. I went to the Derby years ago, and I think the last one I went to was when American Pharoah won the race. And the thing was, I could afford tickets. Like, we could get a box, and yes, the tickets were steep, but they were within range. Like, it's like, okay, this is going to be the luxury for the year. But now, a couple of years later, I went to get tickets because I had some family members who wanted to come into town, and the ticket prices had at least tripled.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to afford that unless you're very rich, which is what Churchill Downs is appealing to. And, what happens to the average consumer, or the person who just wants to take part in what is something that's culturally relevant in town.
Right. Speaking of Churchill Downs, my son and I, we went to Vietnam Kitchen for lunch. He's just back from college and his summer camp job.
Where's Vietnam Kitchen?
Vietnam Kitchen is on the south
South
end.
End, yeah.
And then we went to the Kroger near Churchill Downs.
Mhm,
I think
yeah.
you all go to that
Yeah,
Kroger. And I asked my son, I'm like, so I have two young adults in my house right now. One's about to move out. I said, how much do you think our groceries are going to cost this week? And he guessed $175. And I guessed $250. And it was $253. And this didn't even include things like pet food or like the big staple things that might cost a lot of money. This was food for 3 people for the week.
Mhm.
So, I oftentimes think that we're like frogs in boiling water, and it just gets hotter and hotter, and we look away from the tragedies, and we just keep, I don't know, like swimming in boiling water until what? We boil.
We boil.
We boil.
We die.
We die.
That's what happens. But
Speaking of good things, though, can I transition into some fun stuff coming up?
sure, we need some fun here.
All right, so workers over billionaires. I'm looking at a very creative graphic with a megaphone with workers over billionaires in Lexington on Labor Day, Monday, September 1st, from 5 to 8 p.m. Show up at Courthouse Plaza, which is 120 North Limestone. And
North Limestone, is that like a street or
yeah,
something?
North Limestone is in Lexington, Kentucky, Courthouse Plaza, Labor Day, 5 to 8 p.m. And show up for that. That'll be a great protest. I don't see an equivalent protest in Louisville, which surprises me, but a lot of these are mostly, volunteer run. This is another thing, like, oh my God, where is the leadership,
Mm-hmm.
Now, apparently Morgan, speaking of Morgan McGarvey, if you want to show up and like really, ask him what's going on, he is showing up for a town hall this Saturday, August 30th, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., all of 1 hour, and you cannot find the location until you RSVP. So there are access barriers here, and the time duration is pretty small. But Saturday, August 30th, 11 to 12, he's having a town hall. And if you go to the Louisville Democratic Party's website or their Facebook page, you can register to find out where the town hall is.
Just why would he do that? I don't understand why you just don't say, here, everybody, this is where I'm going to be.
Because we live in a fascist country now and everybody's afraid? I don't know. It seems legal to have a town hall.
Oh, yeah. And if you're going to represent your constituents, you should let your constituents know where you're going to be. But maybe I have no good reason for that kind of action. It makes no sense.
And those are the biggies that I have.
Oh, one of the things that struck me, and I always forget this, but I didn't realize we're coming into a holiday weekend. I've been working for like my whole career. I've worked on holiday weekends, and it just never strikes me that, oh, there's another one coming up. But this is Labor Day, and this is a time to celebrate the worker. We have to do, the fact that you talked about the situation with. Did we talk about the unions, the unionization effort?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just we're talking about how the unions have weakened over the years, and that's because
I think 9.9% of all
Right.
workers are unionized.
Yeah,
now.
it's just
abysmal.
it's really bad. But unions are responsible for things like the 5-day work week, and for things like a fair wage for work. But I don't know why people have been brainwashed into thinking that unions are bad, other than because unions were at one point representing everybody, no matter what race. And, there was this, I think one of the arguments against unions in the past, from the white person perspective, was that, oh, they're going to give black people jobs and take away your jobs. But, the unions have been really important just in terms of making sure people are getting a fair wage. And we've learned over the years that the billionaire class is not for a fair wage. It's for just getting all the money. Like if you're in a company where your chief executive or the owner of the company is a billionaire, what that means is that you're not getting any money for your work. It's all going to the billionaire, who can easily, like.
But what about trickle-down economics,
Yes,
Jesse?
from the Reagan administration, and that proved to be like a waste of time and a waste of effort. But it's like people have been conned into believing that there's the certain altruism in the billionaire class, which never existed. It never is going to exist. And I've said this many times, like, if Elon Musk gave away 99% of his wealth, he'd still have $3 billion. And that's just, can you imagine what could be done with the $297 billion that he's hoarding? He's a hoarder.
Well, while he's doing that and while he's profiting off of the slashing of poor people's programs like nutrition, healthcare, USAID, all these families now across the world are going to die of malaria and all kinds of preventable.
And all these families in
Illnesses.
America are going to die
Yeah.
because of the lack of health care, the lack of money for food, just these things that should be, there's this idea that, or idea on the right that you shouldn't have free health care for people, which is just a ridiculous argument. Health care should be free, but there is the profit motive behind it all, and people don't. People of the super rich class don't believe in giving anything to anyone. They just want it all for themselves. Listen to congressmen. There was a guy, I guess I forget which state, it might have been some Midwestern state, who had a town hall meeting, and he gave this example of, do you think that a 23-year-old who's not working should have free health care? And my mind immediately went, yeah, everyone should have free health care. But he's saying that they're like leeches on society and they don't deserve to get health care for not working. But we should note that his wife had cancer and he got free health care for being a legislator.
Right.
So
Let me tell you about an experience I just had today. So I go to CVS to pick up a couple of prescriptions, and the pharmacist asked me if I want to get a flu shot. And I said yes. And then she said, would you like to get a COVID vaccine too? And I said, yes. Could you look up when my last booster was? Which she did, and it was last September. And then she goes in the system, and I cannot get the existing COVID booster because I've been approved for the new COVID vaccine, which they don't have, which I'm denied for because I'm not 65 years old. And then she tried to fight because I have Crohn's disease, that I have this underlying condition that would make, but in other words, I could not get the COVID booster today. And that is right on top of the news about RFK's fight at the CDC.
Right.
And all I'm hearing now on the news is we're not going to get the COVID vaccine unless you're over 65, and even that might be difficult to get. It was crazy. It was crazy sauce.
It is crazy, and you have a crazy person in charge of the health department who's a former heroin addict. Just go through the list of all the bad things that the Trump administration is doing, and people, again, it's amazing to me that people don't pay attention. And again, I'll go back to this, but it's something you have to blame the media for. This is just a failure on the part of all of the major news organizations to point out that we are in a very dangerous time right now. But as I said earlier, we're in a dangerous time, but the CBS White House correspondent is talking about Taylor Swift.
Right. And by the way, you asked me if we talked about the unionizing. I don't think we did. So Blue Oval SK, which is this major electric vehicle battery maker in Glendale, Kentucky, which is just south of E-Town, Elizabethtown. They have over 1,000 workers, and they're having a lot of safety complaints about their workplace. And they just held a vote to unionize, and 526 folks voted in favor of organizing, while 515 opposed. So 11 more voted to unionize. Now, the company is holding up the vote because they claim that 41 ballots are being challenged because they think they might have been fraudulent. So, and this is a nearly $6 billion joint venture between Ford and its South Korean partner. Now, what else is interesting to me is I thought all this EV stuff was going to go away. I mean, isn't it being tanked?
That's because the Trump administration has been trying to push for cars that aren't electric. But I think in this instance, it's probably something Musk wants.
I see.
Well, I won't even say it's something Musk wants. I say it's something that Trump has probably been bribed to take, because if you are going to do anything with this administration, if you pay tribute to the Don, which is like a very mafia kind of thing. But if you pay tribute to him, then he will immediately change his tune on whatever it is. And I'll refer back to South Park.
Yeah, I
in the
was
last
just thinking about
the last
South Park.
episode where
Bringing their gifts,
Yeah,
as
or-
if he's the king.
right, yeah, or as if he's a mafia
They're the
Don.
peasants, yeah.
Right. And
right.
he's like these rich people like Tim Cook at Apple is giving him this thing, which he really did do. He really did give him this like gold-plated thing. And that's the other thing. These people are giving him gold-plated things because they know that's what he likes.
90,000 square foot addition in the White House, and it's all
Good
going to be
gold.
like Versailles.
Yeah, it's just really trashy.
This is where your taxpayer dollars are going, friends.
Right, yeah. You either can have a big ballroom in Washington or you can have your hospital closed. These are the things that we're trying to, that people should be aware of. And this is what bothers me again about the media, is that they're not harping on these things that really determine what's life and death these days.
I agree.
We talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago, where the Courier Journal, its lead story on a day where there were other things going on, but its lead story on its homepage was about cakes at the fair, the Kentucky Fair, and we went to the state fair. It was amazing, but regardless, given all the things that are happening in the country these days, if your top story of the day is about the winning cake at the state fair, and you're supposed to be the primary news source in the state of Kentucky, that shows that there's a huge failure in terms of what the media is offering.
Let them eat cake, Jesse.
Yes, it's very Marie Antoinette.
Right.
I mean, we talked about Versailles. We talked about let them eat cake. It's just this disconnect where I see people talking about certain things and they don't realize what actually is going on, or they don't know, or when they hear something that the Trump administration is doing, they don't believe it because they're not hearing it from anywhere else. They're either getting their news from Joe Rogan or from Alex Jones or from some other right-wing crazy, or just from Fox News, which lies to people all the time because they've lost like this almost $1 billion lawsuit on the whole voting machine scandal. But again,
Yeah, on Fox News today, left erupts after Catholic school tragedy, and then it has F with 3 blanks, like fuck off, with thoughts and prayers. So that's what they're saying. Like, they're attacking the left for saying that enough with thoughts and prayers.
and not attacking the person who's the shooter.
Right, and not doing anything about this gun violence. Again, we're like frogs in the boiling water. Our children are being gunned down at school.
Yeah, and they have been being
For years.
gunned down for decades
Right.
now because
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook, yeah, those kids would be graduating from high school or even going to college by now, but we just don't.
A-list actor diagnosed with infection skips major film festival appearances. Front page. Big league move. Former Yankee star joins political race to defend Trump's America First agenda. Right?
Yeah.
U.S. Open champ slapped with hefty fine after court meltdown and crowd clash. And then, of course, the Cracker Barrel nonsense.
Yes, what's going? I am not. I don't think people were thinking about Cracker Barrel at all because no one thinks about Cracker Barrel in general. But when they changed its logo, all of a sudden it became this argument against wokeness.
Right.
And as I said in our last podcast, the Cracker Barrel's whatever the symbol is, whatever the logo is irrelevant. What should interest you about Cracker Barrel is that they have surveillance cameras that are actually identifying you by putting boxes over your face. And if you look at the TV screen in the Cracker Barrel for the surveillance camera, it's like this just video identification system that essentially spies on people. And I was talking to someone else about this last week, and they're also doing it in Walmart. So there's all this surveillance going on. They're taking your photo, and people are more concerned about whether Grandpa is still in the Cracker Barrel logo
Right.
than about being just like the victim of a surveillance state.
Well, get this. The shares of Cracker Barrel Old Country Store rose more than 8% on Wednesday after the restaurant said it would discard its new logo amid widespread backlash.
And these backlashes are created by places like Fox News that are just looking for something to divert attention from the fact that we have a president who's corrupt, who's a rapist. There's no other way to describe it. He's corrupt. He's a dangerous person. He should be the person who goes from door to door saying, "I'm a sex offender." But that's not going to happen. And in the meantime, he's firing people for alleged criminal activity. So we've just lost all kinds of rationality these days.
We have. And I want to mention one other thing, and then maybe we should end.
Wrap it
But
up, yeah.
I've got colleagues who are really concerned about the genocide in Gaza, and 12 of us met with Morgan McGarvey to basically support the ban against bombs to Israel legislation. And, we don't understand why you wouldn't take a stance if it weren't for money, if it weren't about the money. I mean, how can you possibly support the genocide of people, of kids, all these amputee kids, etc.? It just shows you how far astray we have gone.
What do you think he's going to do? Do you
Nothing.
think he's not going to vote against it? Or?
No. And we asked him to co-sponsor it, but I don't think he's going to support it.
Then it'd be interesting to see if he's getting money from AIPAC.
I'm sure he is.
And then the amount of money he's getting. But again, these aren't things you're going to find in our media today. When I was at the Wall Street Journal, one of the things I learned was, if you want to know the reason people do certain things, look at where the money is going.
Always follow the money.
Just follow the money, and it'll explain a lot of what happens. So with Trump, it's only about money. Like he will say whatever he can to get more money. Doesn't care about anything other than lining his pockets. And this has to be the most corrupt administration ever in American history.
Right.
But again, imagine the corruption that the Republicans were saying about Democratic presidents, and compare that to the corruption that Republicans are committing these days. And there's no comparison there.
Well, and what's wild is that it's all happening with all kinds of access to 24-hour news.
Right.
Like, you're wearing a watch that tells you everything. It's going to be embedded behind your, retina or something in a few years. It's going to be part of our biology. It's not that we can't access information. It's that we are not getting good information.
Right.
So that's the fourth estate that's failing us.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's definitely failing. And one of the things I can just point out in the fourth estate is that back in the old days, when I was a journalist, there were, if you looked at the major news organizations, there was a lot more diversity at the top ranks. At one point, the New York Times had a woman as the managing editor. There was a black person the executive editor, I'm sorry. There's a black person who was executive editor there. At the Washington Post, there were women high up in the ranks. At the Washington Post, the woman
You
was
had a woman publisher.
Right. At Dow Jones, there was a woman publisher. And now, if you look at the hierarchy of American news, it's all white guys.
Right. Well, and then you look at all the other things too. Look at all the government agencies.
Right.
Every black person and brown person is being removed. I just don't understand why we are not just taking to the streets every single day. Well, I guess because we're trying to feed our kids, right?
Right.
And stay out of the clutches of ICE.
Well, there was just closing out, there was an article in Common Dreams recently that compares the United States to 1933 Germany. and a lot of things that were happening then are happening now, like the sort of the neutering of the free press, the lawsuits that are being filed against reporters for covering corruption, the ownership of media by oligarchs, and the euphemisms that are being used to describe things, to describe putting people in concentration camps, like we're calling it, like in Germany they called it resettlement or labor deployment or evacuation, when it was just like loading people into train cars and putting them in killing camps. And we've talked about alligator Alcatraz, which I still think should be called alligator Auschwitz. But it's like this whole idea that now we're putting troops in the streets in blue cities.
In our nation's capital.
In our nation's capital, the Illinois Illinois Democrats are fighting against it. They're threatening New York if it elects the Muslim as mayor. They've already gone into Los Angeles. And the thing about the National Guard is that red states are sending their troops into these blue cities, which is just, back when Obama was president, and I think we'll close on this, when Obama was president, there was this thing where they believed that he was trying to, there was a military maneuver in Texas, and they were saying, the Republicans were saying that this is Obama's effort in order to put troops in Texas streets to oppress us. And, people like Ted Cruz were yelling and screaming about it. And it was all bullshit. It was just like regular military maneuvers. Today, the president is putting troops in American cities, and you don't hear a peep from Republicans at all.
And you don't really see a lot of coverage on the mainstream media the way that we should.
Right, yeah. Well, that's because our CBS political correspondent is covering Taylor Swift.
Right. One last thing about that. I was listening to NPR the other day, and a gentleman that grew up when Putin basically started his autocratic rule, and he just wrote a book about the rise of authoritarianism in our country. He basically said that it took Putin 10 years to consolidate power for his authoritarian regime. It has taken Trump and co. 7 months to do what was done in 10 years. So this is rapidly happening. And they have all this technology and all this data. I just got another piece of information from a financial institution that was breached. And they're offering, some kind of thing that I can go to try to protect myself going forward. But folks, this shit is real.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad to know Jesse. He's so smart, and get to do this podcast for all of you every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you're enjoying.
Right. Yeah.
Happy 10th podcast.
That's right. This is
Jesse.
our 10th. This is very exciting. They said it couldn't be done.
It couldn't be done, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
See you for the 11th.
Okay. So long, everybody.
Bye.
Our closing music is by John Chamberlain.